to go over all the diseases and the conditions of the intestines, both small and large. My name is Mike, the Heal Your Gut Guy. I used to have horrible Crohn's and colitis, but I fixed it 100% naturally. So we're going to go over what they are. You can't fix it if you don't know what it is, what's causing it, and then how to heal it, how to cure it. All of these things have a fix, despite what your modern doctor is telling you. And holistic medicine, there's a much better remedy than what holistic medicine has to offer. It usually has you suffering on boring, bland diets for the rest of your life. So, all right, so the first condition or symptom that a lot of people get is chronic diarrhea. What is causing diarrhea? A lot of people think it's like a messed up gut microbiome. Now, most people who have messed up gut microbiome have diarrhea, but there's something very specific going on in somebody with diarrhea. This process is controlled by the intestinal muscles. They collapse in an instant. So like this holds like 2 liters of volume, let's say, when it's expanded, a colon, and then boom, let's contract all the muscles. Now we can only hold a liter, and now the vertical muscles are clamping down and pushing the poop out of us. The brain is telling the gut to do this. There's so many processes involved. Only the brain could tell the gut to throw away. Like, think about in the wild how hard it is to catch something, kill it, and then eat it. Why it takes so many calories to catch something and to make food? Why would the body just throw it all away? Look at our language. Oh, what a bunch of crap. This is crap. I want to get rid of it. I can't. They're talking crap. The brain is trying to help you get rid of crap that is decreasing your survival. Or there's actually some physically toxic stuff in your gut, which I'll talk more about. Now, with the other side of this, constipation, this is when the intestines open up. They expand to hold, like, think about the biological purpose of diarrhea versus the biological purpose of constipation. This is a fight or flight response. Diarrhea, run, should I run or should I fight? And then constipation is the fear, freeze response. I need to hold on to this precious thing. I need to hold on to this money. I just lost my job. I need to hold on to this boy or to this girl because they don't like me anymore. They like somebody else. It's holding, like they've done studies where they hook people up to different machines so they can measure what their intestines are doing. And they'll talk about things that make them angry and then they get diarrhea and inflamed. They talk about things that make them fearful and depressed and the muscles expand and open. And bloating. So all your intestines or the intestinal muscles are opening up and expanding like that musical instrument. Goes down to this, then it goes to this. So that's what's bloating. Now pain. I'm going to get into more of this as I go through each condition. So pain can all these symptoms can almost happen in almost any of these conditions, and so we're going to go over these in more detail. So pain in blood and mucus. So a brilliant doctor discovered this, that our gut issues stem from a traumatic event. I had a hard time seeing that because my gut issues started in middle school when my parents would take away my Nintendo. But I see a lot of people, after a breakup, after they lose their job, that is when their gut issues start. And it'll actually start around that time. They usually start for the first time when you resolve the conflict. So when we're conflict active, the gut is actually developing extra gut cells, specialized gut cells to help us digest and absorb this important thing to our life, or some crap I want to get rid of, but I can't. And when that gets resolved, the body gets rid of these high maintenance cells by literally tearing them away with bacteria and fungi, and that's when you get pain, blood, and mucus in your stool. And this process just keeps going. Like if someone comes down with like Crohn's or colitis or diverticulitis, the stress is just on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off until the gut starts to fall apart and you start to experience pain and stuff like that. So those are the general symptoms. So let's go through the conditions one by one and what they mean. So now we know the cause. It's a traumatic event. We know what they are. These gut conditions is, your body is a survival tool. It's putting an organ into a different part of your intestines into overdrive. And Dr. Hammer, the guy who discovered this, could look at your brain CT scan and know exactly what gut disease you had without even talking to you. So what are these things? It's the body putting the gut into overdrive to respond to a traumatic event. And many of you are not conscious of what that event is. It's buried in the subconscious. So the cause is the traumatic event. So the fix is going to be coming to peace with that traumatic event on a conscious and subconscious level, mainly a subconscious level, which a lot of the time you just do bringing to consciousness. So I don't think I need this anymore. So BAM. This actually isn't an intestine thing, but it gets mixed up a lot of times. This gave me a lot of trouble because I didn't know what was going on. BAM, bile acid malabsorption. And it's actually, the body's not having trouble reabsorbing the bile. What's happening is that you're hitting a PTSD trigger, and this is going to be a territorial anger or an identity conflict. It puts your pancreas or your gallbladder into overdrive, and then all this bile gets dumped into your intestines. And it's like literally like bleach, and the body's like, your brain's like, we got to get this out of here, and you get diarrhea. So if your diarrhea is like green and foamy and extra stinky and it burns when it comes out, then you probably have this going on right here. Then we have the duodenum, the duodenum, and the ileum. Now, all these different words mean is inflammation. The duodenum is inflamed. Duodenitis, duodenitis, ileitis. You will not hear these words used very much, and they're hard to pronounce as is. Forgive my pronunciation. These terms are not used very often. There's inflammation here. There's inflammation here. The only way to know that is with an MRI or a capsule endoscopy. That's the only way that you can confirm that there's inflammation and damage in these parts of the intestine. And along with the ileum, the last part of the small intestine. Just means there's inflammation in the ileum. Sometimes when they do a colonoscopy, they can get the camera here, and they can get it a little ways in here so they can confirm if there's inflammation in the small intestine, in the ileum, the last part, with a colonoscopy. But again, usually they follow it up with an MRI. We also have a term called enteritis, which means that there's inflammation in any part of the small intestine. But this is a term that has kind of been retired. It was more popular during the 1950s. I still wish they used this term instead of Crohn's disease. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The guy who discovered Crohn's disease, Dr. Burrell Crohn's means inflammation anywhere from mouth to butthole. But they really don't use the term that way. Like if I punch somebody in the mouth and then kick them in the butt, they're not going to get diagnosed with Crohn's disease. People usually get diagnosed with Crohn's disease when they find inflammation here. Like 75% of people get diagnosed with Crohn's disease when they find inflammation here, even though it doesn't fit the definition. Like this is how ridiculous the GI community is. They can't even get their term straight. So we have celiac and gluten intolerance. Celiac is a really silly term too. So celiac is Greek for abdominal. And Hippocrates and Celsius, all these Greek physicians, and up until the 1950s, celiac disease just meant that you just had digestive issues. It was like the term we use for Crohn's disease almost. And then some guy during World War II did some campaign within the GI community and started to convince people that they were allergic to gluten, and turned this term celiac disease into to mean that it's gluten intolerance. So nobody like you. I understand that some people react to gluten when they eat it, but you have to recognize that most people ate gluten their whole entire lives and they were fine until a certain point in their life. And it's very easy for gluten to be a PTSD trigger. When you're a kid and your parents won't let you have a cookie, or you have to eat the crust. I hate eating the crust of the bread, and if you don't eat the crust of the bread, then you can't leave the dinner table and you can't play your video games. Stuff like that can make a kid react to gluten. If you see blood in the toilet for the first time and you freak out and you run to the computer and you Google, the first thing that comes up, oh, gluten is terrible for you. Even though you're Christian and it says the body of Christ is wheat, it's still bad for you. So when you get messaging like that, it's very easy for our subconscious mind to just freak out every single time gluten comes into our system. Oh, remember that time when you were 5 and you didn't eat your bread crust? Get it out of here. I want to get rid of this crap, but I can't. But most gluten intolerance that I see, it's when somebody sees blood in the toilet for the first time and they freak out and they Google gluten intolerance and they're like, oh yeah, I just had bread. Well, why didn't bread give you symptoms the million times you ate it before? Huh? So that's usually celiac and gluten intolerance. And this term is supposed to describe that someone has something going on in their small intestine. SIBO stands for small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. Now, when these extra gut cells develop, alongside them are bacteria and fungi developing. A lot of people with SIBO will get high SIBO numbers, but they won't have symptoms. And then others will have high levels and will have a lot of symptoms. Now, these bad bacteria and fungi, they are made by our own cells. This is confirmed by many scientists. They've seen it under a microscope. Our brain controls the production of these so-called bad bacteria and fungi. We evolved with them. They come out of our own cells. And so their biological purpose is to break down these extra gut cells we don't need anymore. So the only way to get rid of SIBO and SIFO is to fix that. Oh, I want to get rid of this crappy boyfriend that I can't. You have to come to peace with this conflict on a conscious and subconscious level. And I know that might sound like very difficult, but a lot of the times just bringing this to consciousness will fix your problems. I have a program on my website. Just go to healyourgutguy.com and I show you everything that I did to get better. Even if you don't know what gut condition you have, like it just works because it gets to the root cause of the problem. You don't have to have like a serious diagnosis to get better. Dairy intolerance. A lot of people, like a lot of kids, will have dairy intolerances because mother's milk, or lactose intolerance, because mother's milk is our first important thing to our survival. And there's a lot of times mom can't feed us when we want it. And then when we're younger, there's a lot of times, or not younger, but a lot of times when we're young, we want ice cream, but we're not allowed to have it. We want mac and cheese, but we're not allowed to have it. Or, oh, I don't want to drink that. No, I don't want cheese. Ugh, yuck, goat cheese. Goat cheese can be a traumatic event. It's pretty gross if you ask me. So that's how a dairy intolerance forms. Leaky gut is a stupid term by the holistic community that's completely made up. So when there's holes, this is what, I'm not saying this is true, this is just a theory, I'm explaining it. So they said there's holes in your gut, right? And undigested food particles go in these holes, and then they go to random spots in your body and cause symptoms. So let's put this theory to the test. So let's say I have a rash here, only here. And I have leaky gut, right? So I eat something and this toxin goes all throughout my body and it only comes out here. If this theory were true, every time I ate something not good, it would go, I would just have rashes all over my body. But that's not the case. This term is stupid. Don't, like, anybody who says leaky gut, you just be like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. If I had a rash here, it would be from an attack conflict or a separation conflict. Like, let's say I'm in an abusive relationship, right? And the person grabs me, "You're not going anywhere." And I'm like, "Ugh!" That's why this would respond. Not because I have leaky gut. Crohn's, again, a dumb term, but the way I use it to describe inflammation here, but it could literally mean anything. It just depends on what side of the bed your GI doctor wakes up when you're getting a diagnosis. Because, like, if I say Crohn's, I gotta, like if I'm talking to a GI doctor, I have Crohn's disease. He's gonna need to follow up with a question of like, oh, where's the inflammation? Is it in the small intestine or in the large intestine? Where if I just told him, hey, I have ileitis, he'd go, okay, you got inflammation in the ileum. We don't need to have this stupid long conversation for no reason. Oh, I have colitis. Okay, you have inflammation in your colon. We don't need to have this stupid conversation. It's such a dumb term. And Dr. Burrell Crohn's did not want to use this term. We're just stuck with it today. Now we have colitis, which is inflammation of the colon. It can be called ulcerative colitis. We also have IBS. Don't let me forget IBS. So we have colitis. So just you stick a camera up here or do a colonoscopy and you see if there's inflammation. Now, if there's bleeding inflammation, we call it ulcerative colitis. If all parts of the colon are inflamed, then we call it pancolitis. So we did that. Diverticulitis is a more advanced form of colitis. So if colitis and ulcerative colitis have been like going on for a very, very long time, the walls of the colon start to break down and they start to form these pockets. And then they call it diverticulitis. Sigmoiditis is the sigmoid colon right here. So this region right here, if that region's inflamed, they will sometimes call it sigmoiditis, but that is a term they really don't use that much. We have E. coli, C. diff, and Candida. Now these can grow anywhere in the intestines, and it's a similar story to SIBO. Our body develops these extra bad bacteria and fungi to help remove these extra gut cells we no longer need, and they will go away when we resolve the conflict on a conscious and subconscious level. We have colon cancer. So Dr. Hammer discovered that when someone really, it's a conflict shock of like let's say you're dating someone and then you find out that they're sleeping with your best friend, right? I want to get rid of both of these pieces of crap, but I can't. I'm married to this one and my best friend is married to some family member. I literally can't get rid of them. I'm stuck, like this is a nightmare. What am I gonna do? It will develop extra gut cells to help digest and break down this crappy situation. Then when the conflict gets resolved, these bacteria and fungi get activated and break down this tumor, and that's when you get nasty symptoms. If the conflict is off and on, off and on, off and on, that's when a mess starts to form in the colon. IBS is when you have symptoms and they investigate every part of the intestines and they don't find inflammation anywhere. So they call it irritable bowel syndrome. Now there's other conditions in the stomach and in the rectum, which I'm not going to go over because it's just like a whole nother video like this. So if you want to learn everything I did to get better, to learn everything that I did to get better, I have a step-by-step 13-day protocol with videos and bonuses. Go to my website, healyourgutguy.com, and sign up for it. It's the best gut health course on the market.